whether you're starting creation care, or if you're thinking about getting it started in your church. Here's some things we might want to answer tonight. Where do we find the balance in how to incorporate our faith or our liturgy with our works? And what is our duty as Christians in caring for creation? How do we get our members to get involved in the environmental movement? What is the Holy Spirit directing our church to do with climate crisis and environmental justice? I was kind of concerned that with our church, being careful to make sure that our creation care program wasn't a duplication of something that was already in place in our community. So I, again, contacted a cohort, was listening to her at our last meetings, and her program seemed very successful. So we got together to get this lively discussion going about how our congregations are forming. And we hope that you also learn some ideas from us, but we're also here to learn from you. And again, as Jerry said, please feel free to raise your hand if you have questions or want to comments or give us some ideas, or to put your questions, comments into the share screen section. Tonight we are pleased to welcome Martha Meyer, Rini Ruckteschall, and Allison Ashley from St. Luke's. And joining me from St. Peter's Episcopal Church in Greenville, South Carolina, is Rod Scott, and we both are creation care advocates for our congregation. So Martha, you did such a lovely introduction earlier. I'm going to give it to you.
I think you covered everything. I did want to make sure that, to be clear though, Rini and I'm a volunteer, and Rini is a paid employee of St. Luke's Episcopal Church. Rini runs our children's ministry in many and various ways. And so she could do a webinar of her own about that. But she's here to talk about the intersection between our two. I'm the Green Team leader at St. Luke's, and she's at children's ministry. And we have been very lucky to have actually a number of members of the deanery join us in some of the work that we are doing. And so I'm very lucky to have a very accomplished Green Team leader from St. Mark's Episcopal Church, who is actually in the 2023 cohort. Her name is Allison Ashley, and she's the Green Team leader at St. Mark's, but and she could present many things about what she's done about St. Mark's, but she's just going to present about how we've collaborated together in the deanery to bring a series of programs to our congregations. So I just wanted to make sure of that. Thanks so much, everyone, for being here. We can't wait to share some cool stuff with you, and we assume you'll share some cool stuff with us.
Rodney.
Did you want to introduce Rodney?
Yeah, Rodney, would you please give a overview on your position and what's happening at St. Peter's in Greenville, South Carolina?
All right, so good to see everybody here tonight. Let me go ahead and share my screen. I've got a PowerPoint that I'm going to try to whip through because I've been told I have way too many slides. We'll see how that goes. There we go. So yeah, thanks Laura and Abby, and thanks everybody else. So my role, along with Navi and Laura, is the co-leader of the Creation Care Action Committee at St. Peter's Episcopal Church in Greenville, South Carolina. And I have put a title on my screen here with a little bit of humility injected in parentheses. We were led to describe our experiences as success stories, and that's very, very true in the case of St. Peter's, but I would say it's a success story so far. You know, we've got to be humble and make sure that we realize that we've got a long way to go. Okay, so there's the official title, but I also want to give you a secondary title, which I want to play up throughout the 20 minutes or so that I've got. And actually, I forgot, I'm going to start a timer. There we go. Try to keep to that 20 minutes. So there's my alternative title. The Holy Spirit inspired perfect storm of creation care that's currently taking place at St. Peter's Episcopal Church. Couldn't have used that for my main title too long. But that gets at the nut of it, I think, because I have just been amazed how this thing has taken off. And so I have no explanation for it except that it is a work of God. And I'll talk more about that as we get rolling here. First, let me note that I just plopped a very long text into the chat, and that long text has a bunch of links in it, things that are related to what I'll talk about in this presentation. So hopefully you all can get to that. And if you hear something that piques your interest, maybe there's a link that is related to that. I also put my email address in there. You feel free to contact me. No hate mail, please. But everything else is welcome, and maybe I'll get back to you. I would hope I can do that, especially if you're in the Diocese of Upper South Carolina, and this is stuff that you're into. I'd love to hear back from you, but anybody else as well. Okay, I am going to run through some of these slides pretty quickly, but here is my overview. It's a 2-point outline. Creation care at St. Peter's, a whole lot of doing in a short period of time. So we're the doing side of the doing being dialect here. And there's nothing wrong with either one of those, but we both need each other. And so we've been doing a whole lot of doing in a very short period of time. So what have we done? What are we working on doing? And then how has it all come together, and what is still missing? These are all wonderful people that I wish you could meet face to face. You are meeting Navi face to screen. She's the one with the possum on her shoulder. She told me to use that picture. She is one of the first people I got to know at St. Peter's. I've only been attending St. Peter's for a little more than a year. We started in March of 22. And in April of 22, I went on a holy hike that she led. In fact, that was one of the things when I looked at the website for St. Peter's that led my wife and I to visit St. Peter's, and visited, and we didn't visit any other churches after that. And about a month later, we said, there's going to be a holy hike. Let's go. So I met Laura there, and she has been an advocate for creation care for a long, long time. That's part of the work of the Holy Spirit. She was there stirring the pot. Wade and Dolores Smith in the center there. Wade and Dolores run the community garden, which I'll tell you about. And Wade also leads the men's group. And then Brock and Sean. And Brock Vaughn is the junior warden of our vestry. His wife Sean is the leader of our adult education program, the Faith Forum. All this comes together because in October of 22, Wade and Dolores recommended myself and my wife Donna to be members of the Diocesan Committee for Environmental Stewardship and Justice. So the Upper South Carolina Diocese has its own committee. They recommended us to be members of that committee. We said yes. And November 22, I gave a presentation at the Faith Forum on environmental stewardship. And about that time, I thought, hey, if I'm going to be on this committee, this diocesan committee, I'm going to need some help. So I sent around a sign-up sheet, and about 8 or 9 folks signed up to join me. And in February 2023, we had our first meeting. So, wow, it's been quite a ride. It's gone pretty fast. But this is all part of this movement that has led to this success story so far. Okay, so here we are in June, almost July of 2023, and things are moving fast. As a little bit of background, this is a church that has always been a doing church. We have oodles of ministries, outreach ministries. One of them is a ministry I think of as a creation care ministry that's been in place since 2008, and that's our community gardens. We have quite a few. Let's see, how many do we have? We have 22 of these designated growing spaces. You can see there in the center behind the gentleman who's looking on. And you can join and get a plot if you're a St. Peter's member, or if you're a community member. All you got to do is pay 20 bucks. And that includes fertilizer, mulch, an automatic sprinkling system. You have to come and do the weeding. But it's a great ministry, not only to the people of St. Peter's and the community, but also to a local women's shelter that receives somewhere between 10 and 15% of the produce. You can see the lovely produce there in the bottom of the picture. And there are pollinator plants planted around the margin of the garden. So way back in 2008, people I didn't even know at that time were gearing up for doing some things in God's beautiful creation here that would draw people closer to the land, closer to his creative activity. Okay, on to what we are doing now, new things. So this committee that I mentioned, the Creation Care Action Committee, formed in February of 2023. And right off the bat, we got incredible support from our vestry and our clergy and from other ministries. The men's group, almost from the very beginning, said, what can we do if you're going to have this Creation Care Action Committee? What can we do to reduce our waste? And so very early on, Wade, who I introduced you to earlier, decided we could use bamboo forks instead of plastic forks. And that worked for a little while, but then we discovered the dish sterilizer. Okay, the dish sterilizer pictured in the lower left-hand corner. Apparently that was bought many, many years ago. I don't know quite how many years ago, but the injunction to buy it goes back to maybe the 80s or the 90s of the last century, that is. When we had a bishop, I was not here, but apparently we had a bishop, Bishop Beckham, who mandated that churches should not be using throwaway plates and cups and forks. St. Peter's got on the bandwagon, whenever that was, back in the 80s or the 90s, and bought a bunch of reusable plates and dishes and forks and knives, etc. And they bought a sterilizer, a dish sterilizer. But when I arrived at St. Peter's, the word I got was that nobody's used that dish sterilizer. So that was one of my first jobs, but right off the bat, people got on board. Committee formed in February. Lent came very close on the heels of the formation of that committee, and all the Lenten dinners were served on non-disposable plates and using forks and knives, etc., run through this dish sterilizer. So I'm not going to touch on all of this because my time is limited, but very first, right off the bat, we were doing things. We were saving waste. We were minimizing our carbon footprint. Okay, not long after that, the vestry said, hey, what are we doing with all this paper? On the left there, that's just a sampling of some of the stuff I dumped out of a little binder that I carry with me sometimes back and forth to church, probably just a few weeks worth of paper. One of which was the eponymous blue sheet, which, like many things that have its name named after it, no longer functions the way it was named, because it was called the blue sheet, but it was 3 or 4 sheets. Well, recently on the right-hand side there, it was actually narrowed down to 1 sheet. So this gets in our bulletin every week, and we've gone from 3 or 4 sheets to 1 sheet. We've also decided, and I think this month is the first month it's going to happen, no more paper newsletters unless you request it. So all of our monthly newsletters are going to be going out by email. What else? Well, Navi gave a Faith Forum presentation maybe a month, 2 months ago on loving God through the creation. and a conversation developed about why don't we have battery recycling at the church? Well, somebody on the Creation Care Action Committee researched it and said, hey, I can take care of that. This is a picture of that battery recycling tub that we installed 3 days after it got installed. This is a Saturday morning after a men's breakfast when the announcement came out on Wednesday, I think, that we were going to have this battery recycling option. We also have an eyeglass recycling bin, and we take those eyeglasses to the Lions Club to be used in places where they need it. So just a bullet list. We're just kind of running through things we have been doing. We have an impressive website. I think it's impressive. The address, the link is in that chat document that I posted for you. So I'm not going to go through all the cool things that we have on there, but visit it and you'll be impressed. You'll get a kick. There's a lot of things there from the Episcopal Church. You may not know the Episcopal Church has a Creation Care website, and there's a lot of cool things on it. There are some things that we've put together. One of those things that we've put together and that we archive on the website is a Creation Care Corner blurb that goes in our monthly bulletin, which this month will be electronic. Yay, won't be paper. And here's an example of a Creation Care Corner, the very first one we put out on Meatless Monday. Just a short blurb to give people an idea of something they could actually be doing to try to lower their impact on the environment. There's the list of what we've done so far, plus the one coming up in July. You all are getting a heads up, learning about this before many members of St. Peter's actually do. Laura Navi has written a piece on zero waste households. Amazing. There's some households that only put together enough waste to fill a pint jar. So I don't know how they do that. But that's going to be coming up in July. And I'm making a bit of a point of that because, ta-da, we are also going to be running a waste reduction contest in August. And so parishioners will be able to contribute ideas about how they've reduced waste in their homes, and they can win a prize. And the prize is pretty cool too. It's actually a gift certificate to one of these stores that sells refills and other kinds of waste saving things that every household needs, soap and detergent and that kind. Okay, I'll say more about that contest, just a little bit more in a couple of slides here, but let's keep rolling for the sake of time. Okay, so now we're turning the page a little bit and we're looking at some things that we hope to do in the very near future. The first of which relates to finding a way, and this may happen in a little celebration that we're trying to do in October, finding a way to promote the Episcopal Pledge for Creation Care. Did you know that such a thing exists? I've given you a link where you can go and find that. And it's a really neat thing because it's a PDF that folks can print out, and it corresponds to the Episcopal Statement on Creation Care, which has 3 components: loving, liberating, and life-giving. And so I've just copied a small portion of that PDF here for you. But the idea is people can familiarize themselves with that Episcopal focus on creation care, and then they can do something about it. They can print this page off and they can read what this first part is all about, loving at the top there. We will share our stories of love and concern for the earth and link with others who care about protecting the sacred web of life. And then they can do something. Because I want to share my strong love of God and God's creation, I will. And they make a pledge. They write something that they really want to try to do. And there's some examples for them in the next portion. So again, you can get access to this. Hopefully we can all use it in our churches. So that's the first thing that we've got planned as a future initiative. We still have to put some wheels on that to make sure we've got it figured out precisely how we're going to do that, but it should be pretty easy. I've already spoken about the waste reduction contest in August. I don't know, maybe we'll link a little bit of our idea to promote the pledge to that waste reduction contest. But that's something that we're definitely going to do. The green season is coming up, beginning in spring and running through the fall. This is a time of year in the church calendar when a lot is related to thinking about the earth and sustainability. The feast day of St. Francis is October 4th. And so we are planning to have some kind of a fair to highlight our church's efforts at sustainability. One of the great ideas that we have for that is to host a swap. So bring the stuff that's cluttering your garage, your attic that you don't want anymore, and give it away. That's biblical, isn't it? It's also good for creation. We probably will do an Earth Day celebration. That's in the works. We haven't figured it out yet, but hoping for that. By the way, we're in the middle of a rector transition, so we have a new priest coming very soon. A lot of these probablys have something to do with his arrival, but I'm trusting he's going to be a very go green kind of guy too. Install solar panels. Maybe. We've started asking the question. There's actually a Church of Christ group that gives loans out to churches to do this kind of thing. I first started thinking about this when I listened to a webinar that they hosted, and it all revolved around the Inflation Reduction Act. And did you know that churches can now get something back if they install solar panels? So again, I've given you a link for that. We'll continue to be liaisons to the diocesan committee. We have been in that role and we'll continue to do that. Help them know what we're doing, get ideas from the diocese. And then lastly, I think we have really decided that we do need to focus on strengthening our spiritual formation element in terms of our relationship to God's creation. So that's part of this webinar, hearing from the other church. Okay, so a few more slides here on what's the meat to this story, the bones, the meat and the bones. How has it all come together? And then what do we still need to do? How has it all come together? Our ingredients. I promised one of the panel participants I would share our ingredients with them. So how has it come together? My very first slide, I gave you at least a big hint, the action of the Holy Spirit. And I'm not just making that up. I really see God's hand in this. And I think that his Holy Spirit has led us. A faithful congregation that wants to do what's right. I told you that little story about them buying the dish sterilizer, buying a bunch of non-reusable plates, non-disposable plates. And that just kind of went by the wayside, as things will. But now that we've got a committee, folks are jazzed and they want to do these things. So I give our congregation an amazing amount of credit for this. Clergy and lay leaders that are willing to try new things. I've been a member of various churches throughout my life, and usually when you come up with a good idea, people either say, no, we can't do that, or they say, good, go and figure out how to do it. Here at St. Peter's, we've come up with some good ideas and people have said, great, let's figure out how to help you do that. I'm very impressed with the leadership at St. Peter's. At least one old retired guy or gal who could lead this, or maybe some working person, or maybe two or three that has a lot of energy. I just happened to retire from college teaching, and by golly, this just sort of fell in my lap. So I'm pretty pleased that this is all working out, and I've got some extra time. And then a team of people with vision, hope, and determination. That's my committee, and I am so thankful that each one of them is on board with me, and Laura as my co-leader. Finally, what's still missing? I'm going to keep this brief because this is going to be the body of what our sister church will be talking about. But basically, it's not like we're not doing anything here, but we need to really drill down and try to find a sense of balance that knows and experiences the importance of the being part of God's creation alongside the doing part. Very, very important. So again, it's not like we're not doing anything. We've got priests who are very literate in creation care. We've got the holy hikes. We've got the garden. My wife, who's a spiritual director, is going to lead a retreat next month, this coming month, July, focusing on nature. I'm going to leave you with a quote from somebody that some of you know and some of you may know and find him to be a little controversial, but I don't care. He's got a great quote. So I'm just going to read this and turn it over to Martha. So Richard Rohr, the leader of the Center for Action and Contemplation, he says, the most important word in our center's name, the Center for Action and Contemplation, the most important word in our center's name is not action, nor is it contemplation, but the word and. We need both action and contemplation to have a whole spiritual journey. It doesn't matter which comes first. Action may lead you to contemplation, and contemplation may lead you to action. But finally, they need and feed each other. I think that's a good word. Amen. We'll leave it there.
We had a question in the chat about our NOMO May when we did the discussion on that. I have to say our church mode, but they did leave certain areas to go wild on that question. Rod, what was your experience with that NOMO May discussion?
I had not heard of it prior to you actually writing the blurb, and I did my part and sat back and watched my grass grow for 3 or 4 weeks. So I think that's the big thing, and maybe next year we might encourage our groundskeepers to let the earth go fallow. Maybe for the month of April. Around here, April might be a better month than May for the pollinators. But at any rate, we're starting things, right?
I'm curious if anyone out there in our that join us, if their congregation or they personally did a NOMO May, how did that go? How was that? If you want to put your name or chat in the chat or raise your hand to let us know if your congregation did anything like that.
Yeah, because I'm the one that, this is Jerry, I'm the one that asked that question because I can easily picture that one as instant reaction and pushback. And so, yeah, I was curious, like, oh, how did that one go? And so you're saying actually you guys had already engendered enough trust and momentum that it actually went without opposition.
Well, we got a section back in the back. There was a part that they're letting go wild. There's just some that they want to keep for recreational use to keep it mowed down. But they are letting some of the areas in the wildflower garden. They let our Catherine plant and the children plant a wildflower garden. So that was, as we say, we do baby steps at our church sometimes. So so when I ask them not to mow back in the drainage area, that it would actually be beneficial. It took a little science and master naturalist lecture to convince, but I think the groundkeepers are going to let that area go wild.
I should also note that we don't ask permission to publish our Creation Care Corner blurbs, and nobody polices them beforehand. But we try to write them in a way that is gentle and encouraging. And so I think our leadership trusts us in that, but they aren't necessarily going to be in lockstep with us on everything that we suggest.
Yeah.
Well, Martha,
Yes.
you're the second part of my question. Where's the balance? So let's hear from your congregation and what great things are happening at your church.
All right, I'd be happy to do that. Jerry is gonna run my slides for me because my computer won't allow it won't let me show you what my slides are. So, but to start out with, let me first talk about the fact that St. Luke's is a formation-oriented church. Primarily, it's a music-oriented church, but secondarily, it's a formation-oriented church. So there's parts of the strategic plan that talk about how St. Luke's is a learning community. It will be known for its education as much as it's known for its music. 50% of households is the goal, participating in one or more educational opportunities. Education and formation opportunities are our primary member recruitment method. People sign up for a class, they like it, and then they join the church. So that's how that works. Okay, Jerry, next slide. So it would make sense that we would be stronger in formation than in some of the other areas. In terms of the Green Church Days, the times when we do things when we worship the God in the beauty of holiness, but also with a cognizance of our responsibility to God's creation. And so the primary time is the season of creation. That's September 1st through October 4th. We usually extend the season of creation to be much longer than that because we can't fit all the formation in during the season of creation that we want to do. If you haven't, I'm sure most of you have seen the materials for Season of Creation in the church. We don't always keep it in exactly the same time frame, but and like I said, it usually expands to be a good portion of the whole fall. But it runs from the World Day of Prayer for the Care of Creation, which was instituted by the Eastern Church, Bartholomew I, the Green Bishop, through St. Francis's feast day. And there's a link to a whole listing of all the different places you can go to get information for the Season of Creation. I know we've already put stuff in the chat. Some churches, we do not celebrate Rogation Days. Traditionally, we pray for the crops, but many congregations, especially those doing gardening ministries, expand that definition to include nature as well. So we're proposing that we would add cross-quarter days to these specific times throughout the church year in which you would pay attention to green worship and green activities. So next slide. What is a cross-quarter day? First, there's a lament from the theologian Thomas Berry. We no longer read the book of nature. We no longer coordinate our human celebrations with the great liturgies of the heavens. So cross-quarter days is an effort to coordinate our liturgies with our human celebrations with the liturgies of the heavens. So, and this is a different quote: the year is marked and celebrated in quarters at the solstices and equinoxes, and these points mark out the year for anyone involved in nature. If there's any way, Navi, to put me in so that you can see me in that picture, that would be great, but that's okay if I'm a disembodied voice coming out of nowhere. That's okay. So then in between each of the solstices and the equinoxes is another set of 4. So if you look at the 2 solstices and the 2 equinoxes, and those form cut the year into quarters and then cut it into quarters again, those are called the cross-quarter days. So you have like 8 separate holidays. Thanks, that's great. So the first one is Candlemas, which is a ancient Christian, not ancient, medieval Christian celebration. But it also was initiated on February 2nd in order to incorporate into the church a celebration that was ongoing in the British Isles called Imbolc, which is the quickening of the lambs, giving birth to the babies and suckling their young. It was a time when they believed it was the beginning of spring. Other things that happened on February 2nd that are also quarter days: Chinese New Year, a lot of people know that. It's also called the Spring Festival. We have retained it in this crazy way in the United States, calling it Groundhog Day. Then the second cross-quarter day is May Day. That's May 1st, or Beltane. That's a fertility festival, hoping for a great blessing of the crops. Then there's Lammas. That's the Christian festival that stands for Loaf Mass, Lammas. If you are saying it in Celtic, it's Lunasa, which has all those extra letters in there, but that's Lunasa. And then All Hallows, most people know as All Saints Day, I always mispronounce this, but I think it's Samhain. Well, we'll get to it. Okay, next slide. So we can, the cross-quarter days are thin places. The Celts believed that the cross-quarter days were times when there was no barrier between the natural world and the divine, so that it was more likely to leak through communication with the divine. And that's, of course, one of the reasons why at the end of the year, they celebrate their loved ones who are deceased, because they believe this is an opportunity where you could communicate with them in some way. But each of the turns of the year is supposed to be a time period when things are thin between the human world and the divine world, or the natural world and the divine world. So when the earth turns from one season to the next, it's perilous, and we may see the face of God. So let's do that together as a church. That's what our plan is. So let's go on to the next slide. And this is how it came about in our church. How do we start celebrating the cross-quarter days? We do many other things besides celebrate cross-quarter days, but this was something new that I thought would be most useful to all of you. There's a woman named Barbara Mahaney, who is a journalist at the Chicago Tribune, columnist, and she is the author of the book called The Book of Nature, that was just published this past spring, The Astonishing Beauty of God's First Sacred Text. It's a book of meditations. It's gorgeous. And it was also started by a gentleman named Brother Alberto Verona. He's a spiritual director and professor of psychology. He's also becoming a priest. And so the two of them initiated it at our church, and then Alberto had to move on. Barbara got busy on her book, and they dumped it in my lap, which I was extraordinarily excited and pleased to do. And I did that for a while on my own with the church's help. And then our rector said, let's involve the deanery in this. And so we pulled in St. Mark's, St. Matthew's, which are both other Episcopal churches within Evanston. And the three of us are not the only churches in it. There's more, but those two were interested. And then St. Augustine's from Wilmette. So now it's a group of 4 churches working together on celebrating 4 holidays. So this is how we celebrate. We always do it on a Sunday afternoon, closest to the cross-quarter day. It gives people, in St. Luke's, we always have a program on Sunday afternoon, sometime around 4 o'clock, and it often is a musical program or it's a worship service. But when the cross-quarter days come, then we do the cross-quarter days on those Sunday afternoons. A deanery, Sonia, is a collection of churches under one of the priests in the deanery takes responsibility for that group. Jerry's better than this at me. Okay, and then we made sure it was only 1 hour duration. So families are busy, everyone is busy. We don't want to be stuck in a program for a long period of time. So it's a program, and we divide it up into 40 minutes for an activity that connects people in nature. Sometimes there's more than one activity, and then 20 minutes for a brief spoken worship, though sometimes we've had music. We always have a bonfire. This is sort of true to the Celtic roots. It's a wonderful way to gather, and it's also an activity for some of the people who love to keep the fires going. Cross-quarter days has been confusing to the congregation, so sometimes we just call it outdoor adventures. I think this was Reni's idea, our director of children's formation. And then the churches took turns planning the worship or the activity element. So sometimes the church would do both the worship and the activity, and sometimes the churches would split so that the churches would be working together, collaborating. Someone would bring the worship and someone else would bring the activity. Next slide, please. All right, now I'm going to turn it over, I think, to Allison, who
Yes.
hosted Allison Ashley. She's in the 2023 program at the year-long program at Deep Green Faith, and but she's been her green team leader at St. Mark's. So this is one of the congregations with whom we collaborated. She had done a lot of the physical side, the sustainability side of things at her congregation, and was looking to do more of a spiritual side. So we hosted this at her church, and so she's going to tell you a little bit about our celebration. And there's 2 slides for Candlemas. One of them is this one that explains what we did, and the next one is pictures of what we were doing.
Thanks, Martha. So we were excited to host Candlemas this year. And one of the things I've loved about being part of this group is that we're collaborating with other churches in the community. And so we're getting to know one another, and it really feels like we're all in this together. And at Candlemas in Chicago, you can imagine it tends to be very cold. And so instead of having an outdoor adventure, we had mostly an indoor adventure. We had opportunities for people to make beeswax candles, and we brought the nature indoors to do some ephemeral art. And then we did also have a fire pit outdoors, and then ended with a time of worship all together. And one of the things that I found so special about this is that after people made candles, then they brought them to be blessed by the rector. It was Reverend Cat at St. Luke's at this time. And it was a joyful time. And one other thing that was really special is that it's very family friendly. And all of these outdoor adventure days, cross-quarter days events are planned with all ages in mind. And it was a very special experience for all of us. Can we take a quick look at May Day next, please?
No, we're gonna look more at Candlemas.
Okay, there's the Candlemas.
No.
Yes.
This is someone doing the activity of the ephemeral art.
Yeah, and some of the candles, and
yeah, some of the candles that were made. And then you go ahead.
Yeah, and then there's a photo of some of the worship. So you can see it's very informal. So we are together. And then May Day tends to be very blustery and chilly in Chicago. However, the last 2 years, it's been celebrated at the lake. And it's wonderful to have the wind and to have the beauty of the dunes and the water for contemplation. And so this year, we celebrated with making in miniature maypoles with ribbons. People could create their own. So there's always a creative aspect. There was a time of contemplation that people could have by the water. And then we also gathered for worship at the end. And it is a joyous time. And one last thing that's so lovely about this is that it's never the same people. And so you're meeting others from congregations, and as we contemplate, as we worship, as we create together.
Okay, let's see the pictures from May Day. If you could turn the next slide. Beautiful. You can see how cold it is. This is what May Day is in Chicago. You know, we don't wait for the weather to be good, because otherwise all of our celebrations would be in 2 months. And now we're being overwhelmed with smoke, so it wouldn't even be outside now. You go ahead, Allison. Is there anything here you want to share more?
Yeah, I'm finished. I think my time is up, but it's been a joyful thing, and we really look forward to planning the ones for the coming year and to continue to have new creative and worship experiences in nature. Thank you. So I think the next slide would be for Lamas, yes.
Yes, and I
Okay.
think that Reni's gonna share with us about this. Is that right?
Yeah. And I just had a couple little practical notes to just kind of throw in there. To just even, it's been just such a joy to work with Allison and Martha and the other churches. And one of the things about this that has turned out to be so special, as I think others have hinted at, but I kind of wanted to just elaborate on that a little bit, is because it is shared among the churches, that so that like one church will handle the liturgy for one cross quarter day, and another church for that same service will handle the meditative sort of activity. And so it ends up being really well-rounded and having this real feeling, because different parishes are doing the work and it's coming together. I think it makes it all the more special and gives it even all the more that transparent feeling, kind of gets rid of more boundaries, you know, in the keeping with the whole idea of cross quarter. And then I also wanted to say that like the activities are meant specifically, I think, to be kind of meditative and without being directed so much to be that. Like you know, like there's the people do them in different ways, and of course different age groups do them in different ways and with different intention. But I just wanted to share a really quick story that my husband, during the Candlemas, like he sat and he rolled so many candles, and I was like, oh my gosh, he's using up all of Allison's beeswax. Oh my goodness. And at the end I said, you know, John, you rolled so many candles. And he said, my mom loved candles, and he had lost his mom that year. And I wanted to just emphasize sometimes that like that activity that's there, we don't know what effect that meditative activity has and how deep that can go. And it's a different way of worshiping. And I just wanted to share that because it was kind of a special moment, and I felt like it was very helpful to him without him even knowing it. Okay, so I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, but I'm going to go on to the loaf mass. We have one coming up, but this is with regard to the one that happened last July, or August 1st. I think it was July 30th or something last year. And we met actually in the woods. So we not only change who's running different pieces of the service, but also where it takes place depending on the season. The last one you saw, the May Day, we tried to host at the beach so that we could get the wind, you know, off of the lake. And we certainly did get the wind, but not a lot of feeling of running in the rain, because it was very cold that day. So this one was held outside at Harms Woods, of course, and Allison brought beautiful crowns to making materials so that they were made of all natural. I'm not sure what the structural base was, but it was some sort of bendable willow, I think. And then you could put flowers into it, and I mean, everybody loved it. And some people opted to go for a walk during that time and just spend a little time in the woods. And some people opted to make the flower crowns or wreaths. Do we have, and then we got this amazing bread, which we're going to do again this year, from a bakery that bakes with grains, ancient grains. And yeah, so that local bakery.
Okay, next slide.
And
One of the things I wanted to make sure that to share was that Rini found a way to get the kids involved in nature contemplation that I thought was very successful. It's if you were thinking of doing a program that's sort of based on living in an icon, it's a little bit inaccessible to young children if you're including family members. Obviously, all the older folks are comfortable with that kind of a process, but the younger kids need something a little bit more directed. And so Rini found this wonderful program called Go Find It Too, where you get a card that tells you what you need to go look for in the woods. And it really focused the children in a way that they were able to then do the activity next to the adults. So I thought that was really a really brilliant idea on how to extend living in an icon in a simple way to young children. And so I thought that was a particularly successful thing that happened during our Loaf Mass celebration. Did you have anything else to add, Rini, or should we do?
I was gonna say, it was surprising too how many adults wanted that focus card. It was really surprising. Like, I don't know. I mean, a lot of people took it, and then they wanted to show me or Martha what they had found, like, because we were kind of made it clear, don't move anything. And so they, like, it'll say something wavy, or you can put two cards together and it'll be green and pointy. And some of them get really complicated depending on how many cards you put together, and you can put more cards together for older people and whatever. Anyway, so it was amazing, and people really wanted to share what they found. So again, like, just a way to create meditation possibilities for people.
Okay, next slide.
Oh, right. And then this one is still slightly in the planning stages. And this will be at our church in our sort of courtyard. And we will have the fire going. I don't think we were allowed to have a fire. I think that one that we just looked at, we weren't even allowed to have a fire at the Forest Preserve because it was too dry.
Yeah.
So that was one of the few that we didn't have a fire at. But yeah, this is very exciting because this a local reverend, I think this priest actually contacted us when she heard about what we were doing and wanted to be a part of it. So she is going to be doing this service, and also book talking her book, which is just so exciting. Clearly the Sacred Life of Bread. And we'll be getting well, actually we aren't getting bread from Hewn again. We're making our own bread over the fire, so wish us luck. And Martha has come up with a brilliant plan so that we can get in both rising time and kneading time. So
Okay, next slide.
and then this one, I was like, oh, leaf rubbing, so fun. But I was not like seeing the beauty of it at all. Oh my goodness, you cannot believe how many people did leaf rubbing. It was just amazing. And the adults were just crazy for leaf rubbing. And some people made art out of their leaf rubbing. I mean, everyone made art, but some people made like, wow, I'd hang that on my wall. It was just amazing. And I actually took Martha's leftover supplies and left them out for the choir kids. And when I came back the next day, the amount of leaf rubbing that had occurred, I was like, oh my goodness, like, people are craving this sort of simple activity, hands-on meditative thing. So that was
to explain what leaf rubbing is. You take a leaf, you put it down on a table, you tape it down, and then you put a piece of paper over it, and you take a crayon that has no paper on it, so that it's all, then you put the crayon flat, and you move it back and forth over the leaf, and you can't see the leaf because the paper's over it, but then you start seeing it, it starts appearing to you because you're rubbing the crayon, and the color is beginning to fill in all the detail of the leaf, and it's quite beautiful.
It was amazing. And then this one we did, as it says on the slide, at St. Augustine's, and they have just the most beautiful yard, and it was covered in leaves, and the kids just had a wonderful time. And I think we all had a wonderful time watching them. And that particular rector, I believe it's her husband, is that Guitar Steve?
Yes.
Yeah, so Guitar Steve, he just played fabulous music. So there was a more musical component to this one. Not that there isn't always a little bit of music, but this one was kind of exceptional in that way, with the outdoor guitar and the bonfire and the s'mores and the kids running in the leaves, and then just this quiet silence as they brought forward their fears, people of all ages, to burn in the fire. Very powerful and so simple.
Next slide. Here's some pictures of the leaf rubbing that we're doing. And then there's also picture of the worship space, and of course the s'mores at the end.
Yeah, just fabulous.
All right, next slide. Jerry, is there time for me to take 5 more minutes?
Oh, well, it's kind of up to your cohorts here. You were at
It's-
8:35, we got 25 minutes, so you tell me.
Okay, I'm going to take 5 more minutes. There's something else that we've done in formation that might be new to you all, and I just want to make sure you have the information. The Evanston Public Library has instituted something called the Blueberry Awards. We named it Blueberry because Newbery is the most well-known children's book award, and blue, of course, refers to the pretty blue planet. It is an award, an honor for the best nature and climate books published in the United States for kids 3 through 10. The library has been presenting the Blueberry Awards to try to make sure that this information gets out. So we've been presenting to teams of people that do nature activities with children. It's purely secular. But we have found that it makes a lot of sense for some of these brilliant books for young children to be used by churches when we're talking about God's creation. So I have done some story times at St. Luke's using the Blueberry books, and the kids are fascinated and engaged. It's worked out really as a kind of lovely program. There's a local vacation Bible school at our local Methodist church that wants to focus on the Blueberry as part of their Let's Get Wild vacation Bible school. And St. Mark's, Allison Ashley had the brilliant idea of investing in some of the books that were recommended for the Blueberry for a particular year, and then having them available in the pews for children so that they could look at them during the service or check them out from St. Mark's, take them home, and read them as an extension of their learning about God's creation. If you would like this list, it's updated every year with new awards. I've given the email here so that you can make use of that. If you ever have a time when you want to engage the children in a nature activity, some of these books are brilliant for getting started on a nature walk. So you could read it before your holy hike, perhaps, or some of them are wonderful focus on birds or focus on bugs and creatures that kids are interested in. So I just wanted to make sure that you were aware. And the next page. Just to give you an idea, this is the winner of the Blueberry Award for 2022. It's a wonderful book about how the trees communicate with each other underground using the mycorrhizal, that would be the mushroom network. At the back of the book for teachers, there's a guide on how trees can be a model for the kids, caring for each other, caring for their community. So it's a lovely book that would work very nicely. Rini and I have used it to read to the children. This is a good one for I guess K through 5. You could do it maybe with 4s and 5s if you were explaining things as you go and not just reading. But anyway, I just wanted you to see how beautiful some of these books are, and so not to miss out on them. And then the next slide. Thank you for listening. Go forth and celebrate. And these are pictures of some of the ephemeral art that was created in several years worth of the Candlemas celebrations that we've done. Some of these people are really artistically gifted, but you'd be surprised, like the flower is done by a young girl, the face is done by a young woman, and the art collage was done by a high school student who was very interested in art. So it's interesting to watch what happens when you provide people with an opportunity to do ephemeral art. Okay, and that's all we have to share. So I'm going to turn it back over to Navi and take it away, Navi.
Wow.
I think there's some really good questions that came in the chat.
Yeah, there's one, I'm going to kind of combine it. Jerry, help me with this. The one question was, do you ever hear some who consider these pagan observation as non-Christian and therefore inappropriate? And Jerry's question about how these these are some forgotten traditions within the Christian worship as well, you know, there, so. and-
Yes. Okay, I can certainly answer that.
Yeah, thank you.
Evanston is a liberal bubble. So no, I have not gotten any responses, but I would anticipate that I would if I were in another place. And the response is exactly what Jerry said, is that these are ancient Christian celebrations that go back to the Middle Ages, back longer than many of our celebrations that we are currently following. And so this is going back to our roots as Christians. And in fact, it's the same kind of response that we have about the entire program that Deep Green Faith is running, because many Americans right now are turning to, as you can see in the New York Times bestseller list over and over, are turning to Robin Wall Kimmerer to get a sense of the personhood of the natural world. And we can go to Robin Wall Kimmerer to learn about that, but we can also go back to St. Francis and St. Clare, and even further to the Desert Fathers. So we can, in addition to learning from our Native American brothers and sisters, we can also mine our Christian tradition for things that celebrated the natural world and its rhythms. And so as Deep Green Faith is trying to do that in a global sense, this concept of cross-quarter days is going back to our medieval past and saying, what life-giving opportunities are there available for us in our past? So instead of calling them a cross-quarter day, you can simply call it Candlemas. You don't have to mention that it's in between the equinox, equidistant between the equinox and the solstice. That doesn't have to enter in. You can just call it Candlemas. The only one that doesn't have a medieval Christian title is Beltane. We call it May Day because it's a fertility festival. So I'm sure that the priest didn't want people, being fertile on the altar. But May Day is a secular celebration that can be easily, and it's a celebration of flowers and the flowering of the earth, and that can be easily tipped into a Christian setting. So you don't need to go back to the Celtic roots. You don't need to tell people about this is called Imbolc or this is called Lugasa. You can skip all that stuff if you feel that your church would recoil thinking it's pagan, because it was cultural appropriation by the Christian church. So it's the Christian church who and the interesting thing, for example, with All Saints, that was not originally in November. The Christian church moved it because the Celts were celebrating the holiday, and they could not break them of it because it's so important for people to be able to commune with their elders that have gone before them. And so what the Christian church did is it moved their All Saints celebration to be the time of the same time that the Celtic celebration was going on. And then it was backwards when they moved into Mexico. The Spaniards invaded Mexico, and they forced the Mexican people to move their ancestor celebration, which had been in the spring, to move it to this time. And they weren't doing it to move it to a Celtic celebration. They were moving it to what the church had then celebrated for 100 or 150 years as All Saints Day. And so that's why Day of the Dead is actually overlapping with All Saints Day, because they forced the Mexican community to move that holiday. So these are all ancient Christian holidays that we are just coming back to as we begin to realize our responsibility to the earth. Does that help?
Some of the books that we've suggested, some people will say, well, this isn't scriptural, this isn't spiritual. Like in the reading list I got for environmental justice, Robin Wall Kimmerer came up on that one. the best books on environmental justice. There's another one, there was but that one I'm thinking of specifically. And I'm just kind of wondering, how do we weave that, popular culture reading lists, and the Nature of Oats is the one that I just finished. I saw a lot of spirituality in that, and the connectedness of nature and creation, but yet it didn't, quote Bible verses or, so I'm wondering, how do we knit and connect that into our scriptural readings?
Yep, great question. Scott, yeah, Rodney, sorry about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say a little bit more about Robin Wall Kimmerer's book. And what she does there is, as I said in the chat, not theology, but it's spiritual. But the other thing that she does is she talks about biology, which is something that I think a lot of people can take in as something new and exciting. And she does it in a winsome way that is very intriguing. So, if I were to advocate reading that at a book club meeting of St. Peter's, I would say, well, it is spiritual. It's not Christian, but it certainly has principles in it that we as Christians can adhere to. And it also brings in modern understanding of the creation, which is exciting. Just my 2 cents worth on that.
Yeah, and I want to push, Navi, this is an excellent question, right? Deep Green Faith spends a lot of time on this. And Braiding Sweetgrass, I think, is an excellent illustration that because Christianity in the last 1,000 years has lost its connection to nature, we assume it was never there. And therefore, what we do is we turn to indigenous traditions to try to find a connection that we think we never had. And so I guess what Martha's getting at a little bit is, yeah, it was there. In fact, when we hear it now, it sounds pagan, when in fact it was Christian. And so the hard work is to recover our own faith tradition. So Rodney, what I would want to do with Braiding Sweetgrass is, yes, indeed, to engage that excellent book, just as you have said, and at the same time, or in sequence, then turn to a Christian theologian who actually does the same thing from the Christian tradition, so that we don't have to turn away. We can embrace what we have been, I want to say, all along. We just have to uncover it and recover it. And that's some hard work. That's actually at the heart of what the center does, is we're trying to recover that which we want to say has actually always been there in some way. So yeah, this is at the heart of the matter to me. This is really a core question.
I want to talk.
I
want to talk, but I can't figure out where my hand goes.
Doing great. Just speak.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
It worked. Go, Jane.
I live in the Driftless area, the southwest portion of Wisconsin. It's rural. There are a lot of people who've moved here from Chicago. I'm definitely not the only person from the Chicago area, and from St. Mark's and St. Luke's, of course. I'm so happy to hear all of you. We have done a deliberate advertising and selling of the environmental films that we sponsor in the schools. We sponsor them for free. The teachers love them. We know exactly why we are sponsoring environmental films for kids. And it's like the Blueberry Award. It's the exact same system. We know exactly what we're doing. And we invite the teacher. I put it in the chat. We've invited the teachers in. If you are nervous, if you think you're going to be proselytized, don't worry about it. Come and look at these films and then make the decision as to whether or not you want these free films to use in your classroom. And so we've gained a lot of friends. We've also gained a lot of credence. because we don't cheat. You know, we're not, when I'm saying that, I'm saying we're not sticking in religious stuff. Somebody wants to come to church, they're always invited to come to church. And that's a different system. But anyway, that's what we've done. And it works year after year. I'm finished. Someone say something.
Navi, did you have more questions for us?
A question just came in for Jane about your film list. Is it available?
It's Wild and Scenic Environmental Films. You have it in Evanston. And they have school programs.
How would someone who isn't in Evanston find out about it?
They'd go to Wild and Scenic Films, which is located in Nevada City, California.
Great. That's wonderful. Okay,
Maybe
Navi, do
it
you have any,
says- Oh,
Navi, do you have any more questions for us?
No, Jerry, you were going to ask a question?
Well, Phoebe had said, I'd love to read a theology of mycorrhizal fungi, you know, and fungi, and I think that's I think we can get there. I mean, I think that's kind of an emerging. I think if we looked around, and I wish I could name it, because that's right. Me too. I would love to read a theology of it. We have a theology of dirt, right? We've done that webinar with Colin, which is very similar, right? It's the same question. Where's God in all of this? And the Christian, I think the Judeo-Christian language for all of this is the land. So we do have, with Ellen Davis and some key theologians out of Duke, Wiersbe and people like that, there is a significant theology of the land, which I'm not sure it has to go into mushrooms, but it's the same thing, kind of, that God is deeply engaged and involved in soil. And that may be a way for Christians to get into this with and be Christians, right? To be Judeo-Christian without apology, to say, we've been talking about the land for 2,500 years. Give me a break. It's just that we had in New Testament times when we became unlanded, and in medieval times when we became empire, we lost the conversation.
Yeah.
But the conversation's there. It needs to be found, recovered. And I think we can. So that's sort of an answer to a theology of that. It has actually, it's very ancient in a way. We need to articulate it to ourselves with, I don't know. Anyway, I'm kind of thinking out loud. So I'll shut up.
Yeah.
Proceed.
On that, to follow up with that, Jerry, in the book that I'm currently reading, All That We Can Save, Truth, Courage, and Solutions for the Climate Crisis, one of the things, one of the authors, it's various authors that have submitted writings, and Jane, you'll love this. One of the authors has said the importance of storytelling to help us get back to those roots, to our history, to how many of us can probably trace our history back to agricultural, or we were, my family were hunters and trappers and fur traders and things like that, how much we depended on the land, and how knowledgeable they were, and how we've lost that knowledge. So that's Jane,
Well, and it's
storytellers
precisely
going.
it's precisely through the fur traders actually that we lost a good chunk of our connection. They obviously were not acting deliberately this way, but the land, as the northern Illinois, northern United States, was all full of beavers, and the typology that we look out and see as what we think of as the natural world is not the natural world, because we came in and we trapped all the beavers because they had the most fabulous fur, and our ecosystem has been so damaged by the loss of beavers that that we actually, when we're doing restoration, we don't even know what we're restoring back to. There's a wonderful book about that called Eager. The book is called Eager, like eager beaver. I can't remember who wrote it, but I'm sure one of the learned people on this program would be able to share that. But so, you know, it's such a loss. We've lost such touch with what our natural world is supposed to be looking like.
We don't know what normal is.
Mm-mm.
Right. So we're down to 4 minutes. I'm going to make sure that if anybody really does have a burning thing, that burning thing is allowed to emerge. There's mentioned. So one thing I want to call out before anybody starts leaving is there's a lot of stuff that's been dumped in the chat. A lot of links, a lot of names. If you want to save that chat, just go down to the bottom of the chat. If you have it open, there's 3 little dots, and you click on those dots, and there's the word save, and you click on that, and it'll save it to some default location somewhere on your computer. Can't tell you where that is, but it'll be there. So all that text and links will be there if you want to save that. So let me get that set. And Rodney, you started first, and then I think the conversation shifted to the second presentation. So is there anything you want to bring back about what you, or any questions about the great work that those guys are doing? There was some early questions, I think, to you. I think we got caught up. I mean, I think some of them were how did you guys do some stuff without resistance? I mean, why is it that it worked? This is the question actually I have, Navi, above all things, is why did this work with you guys? And there's 40 people in the room who may be sitting here saying, well, bully for you.
Yep.
But why isn't it working for us? And that to me is the question. And so is there any response in 2 minutes to that?
Yep, and I would go back to my title slide and say it was a perfect storm.
Mhm.
And I don't know exactly what that means, but I do think God was behind it. And I didn't expect it. No way, Jose, did I expect everything to just fall in our laps this way. And it may yet crumble down around our ears. I don't know. But I guess I would just encourage people to hang in there. It's not easy, but hang in there. Navi has been doing it for a long time. And it wasn't quite the perfect storm when she started.
Yes, and you got to come in at the last minute and scoop up all the glory, right?
Oh, after she did all the work, he just took all the credit? Is that how that went?
That's why I keep trying to give the credit to God, because
We give the
otherwise
credit
it
to
could
God,
look
yeah.
that way.
It was definitely a Holy Spirit thing, yeah. I just want to tell people that for it took about 2 years to get the Holy Hikes started. And there have been times that only 3 people showed up, but we just kept going on and going on. So that went on for 7 years. And then you came in, Rod, and but I think Deep Green Faith, really, Jerry, was what gave me the courage, because I had the knowledge of, I could back the theology up to my nature.
Right.
I knew the right, I guess the right questions to ask and the right people, and it was, I say that it's a Holy Spirit. It's just, but Deep Green Faith was definitely a huge helping to get my confidence and courage up to do these kind of things, to get the Holy Hikes and get the environmental conversation going on in our congregation.
I'd also like to say that leadership counts. Leadership with imagination, leadership that knows how to articulate what it is you're trying to do. That
Which just begs the question, how do you get that leadership?
always.
Well,
always.
there's also something I think that we need to understand. And that is that, you know, you are not going to have a church of the future if you are not able to pivot and support people's deepest anxiety.
Yeah.
Don't tell me with the window outside that's all full of smoke, that your congregants are not worried on some maybe chthonic level deep down below, but definitely worried. And if we cannot bring our deepest concerns to the church, it will die. And so somehow we have to be able to do that. We have to be able to bring our fears and our ideas and our hope to our church. And if we can't talk about climate change there, you know, because people will tell me, oh, it's such a downer, Martha. But you
It
know,
is
it
a
doesn't-
downer if it's nothing but that, Martha. So
That's right.
yes, I think you're right. So, and the finishing line to that though is those anxieties need to be met with a vision.
That's
of
right.
Hope.
Phoebe,
And
you had a
don't
question.
do that, right? And we're just gonna. Anyways,
So-
Oh.
I see several questions that have loaded up. In the last
Yeah.
and several are to you, so.
Phoebe, you had a question or
Oh, I
comment.
put the little hand clapping emojis because I
Oh,
so resonated with everything that Martha was saying. I didn't have a question.
Yeah, I'm seeing clergy and diocesan support, very important. Yes, yes. We need to,
Clergy, for
oh,
sure.
Holy Heights, yes. I put the link in there. It is holyhikes.org. Go into their website. They will show you how to start a chapter. If you want to get into conversation about it, I will leave my email real quick, and it's very easy. It's onebigflake, ONEBIGFLAKE @yahoo.com. And the reason why it is that is because my maiden name was Snow.
So if I can just circle back to something Martha was saying a minute ago and make an offer and see if we can figure out how to come through on it. Martha, you're talking about how we need to realize that this is real and it's going to kill us. And if we don't do something about it, the planet will be gone. You didn't say that, but
I didn't
in
say
short,
that.
that's true. Maybe Navi would corroborate this, I hope. One of the first things I did at St. Peter's was to make a presentation on climate change. And I tried to bring in all the dire consequences, but I also tried to paint some pictures of hope. I don't know if there's an easy way, maybe through Deep Green Faith. I would be happy to share those slides if nobody gets me in trouble for copyright infringement of images I stole and things like that. But, you know, for use in your churches, if you wanted, and you could feel free to modify too. So don't know if that's something we can work out.
Yes, and there's a remark in here to actually, will you guys share those presentations? So we'll get that answer and we will email out to everyone. Whatever version of that is okay to do. Right. Providence Online Monthly Creation Care. There's another commercial. Thank you very much. Providence 4 and 5 have a monthly. We will be broadcasting. It's the second Monday of every month at 1 o'clock Eastern. We will be broadcasting live from It's All About Love at 1 o'clock on the 10th. So subscribe to the newsletters of Province 4 and 5 Creation Care. That's the way to get at this stuff. So subscribe to Deep Green, subscribe to Prop 5, subscribe to Prop 4, and every other link that's in this chat. There's lots going on. So, okay.
Hey, Jerry,
Yep.
Wendy had a question about small congregations. Did we cover that?
Well, trying to, but that's a great and always critical conversation is right. So she said, you know, you guys are talking about large congregations. What about the small ones?
I'm small.
My suggestion for that is to, well, first of all, our Holy Heights, that's for the whole diocese. We open that up to the whole diocese. So anybody, any church can come, I mean, well, anybody can come to a Holy Hike, but we advertise it. We got other priests from other dioceses to come in to celebrate, to be our celebrant for the Eucharist. So I would say, if you've got a small congregation, your best, join up with some other parishes, and that's been a success. Our parish isn't huge. It's not. There's bigger churches in town than us. So, but
Yeah, I would also say that even though the churches that I was collaborating with were Episcopalian, I had a lot of interest from other congregations that are liturgical. So the Catholics have a wonderful, wonderful program based on the Pope's teachings, Laudato Si. I may be pronouncing that wrong,
Right.
but and they were interested in coming. They certainly understood what Candlemas was. They certainly understood what Lammas was. So they understood it better than the Episcopal congregation. So if you join with your green, I mean, you're not going to have communion together, but you could certainly do the rest of the deep green faith portion together, the living in an icon kind of contemplation, or any of these crafts that families can do together and older people enjoy being with younger people. So you don't have to collaborate just with Episcopal churches. You could collaborate with, if they have a Lutheran church in your neighborhood that, well, certain the ELCA Lutheran churches, I guess, and the Catholic churches are liturgical and usually open to working with Episcopalians. We cross commune often with the Lutherans, so it doesn't have to be limited. Your collaboration does not have to be limited to your church building alone.
And
All right,
on
we're at
the,
9:07, so go ahead, but I'm going to start pushing this here.
I was just going to say on the sustainability thing, yeah, like Jerry said, some people may be sitting out there saying, well, bully for you, you did all that. But one of our mantras is do something, start small, try something. So on the sustainability front, even a small church can look around and say, look at all those incandescent light bulbs. Maybe we should go to LEDs. And look at all the paper we're sending out in the mail. We do have email. So just one word to encourage, you don't have to do everything, but try to do something.
Yes, what I was told by Catherine, who is your compatriot, who runs the Province 5, she told me, celebrate any win, no matter how small, in your church newsletter.
Yeah.
Even
and my
tiny.
advice would be to start being church. So
Right.
one thing you do is, even if you can't change light bulbs, just start praying differently. So a lot of this is not to try to talk non-environmentalists into being environmentalists and non-nature lovers to be nature lovers. It's really talking Christians into being Christian. That is also can be a starting place for being small. But and another commercial is talk to us at Deep Green. This is our job. We will help at least have conversation, if nothing else. So yes, if you're feeling alone out there, there are networks and there are resources. You got to find them. There may not be great answers, but there are networks and resources, which I see some of them showing up here in the chat. We are at 9:09. We've lost 25% of our people, and so on. But thank you for an excellent time and important conversation and engaged conversation. And I think we need to shut her down for now. I hear in the chat though, there's asking for those PowerPoints and any other resources. And again, save the chat. And any necessary last words from any of you folks?
Just go in peace and love God and save the world one day at a time.
Yeah, and save yourself.
Please
Yeah.
say hi to Greg Milliken, who's just been called to be your rector, I think in Evanston. He's from the church where I'm the deacon, All Saints in Beverly Hills. Please
Dang,
say
is
hi
this
to
a surprise announcement? Did you just spill some beans that they didn't know? Which would be great.
Oh,
I don't know. No, I don't actually know.
No,
I
they, no,
just
they
looked at
know, they
Naomi's
know,
face.
they
She
know their
kinda went,
pastor.
huh? No?
Yes, yeah. St. Mark's knows their new pastor. That's not a
Yeah.
problem.
I'm
yeah,
sure.
okay. All right.
Excellent. Yep.
Okay.
Very good.
Just
Wow.
sign off.
Go in peace to love and serve the
Blessings,
Lord.
everyone. Go in peace, as
Yeah.
you say. Exactly right.
Goodbye.
And
Thank you
love and
very much
serve
for
all
today.
creation and the Lord.
Great.
See everyone.
Peace.
Peace. Let me save this chat. All right.
All right. That
Good
was
job,
good.
y'all.
Oh, thank you. Cause oh, wow. That's hard hanging into those conversations. Yeah. I would almost need a backup on that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But that's where we start getting down to it. So this is why I was kind of saying, need to make sure you got time for these people to warm up. Because that, and they were, we could have gone for another half an hour, right? So it's important stuff.
It'd be fun to do one. What does it look like in a year? A revival, or to see what's happening. What have we learned in the year?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
It's one thing to get started, it's another thing to sustain.
Yep.
And yep.
Yeah.
And that's a worthy conversation too. How do you sustain? What is it that's long lived?
I have a question for you. The term that's coming up now is an NONE.
Yeah.
What is that? Is that people that have faith but not affiliated with a congregation or church or
Exactly right.
religion?
Unaffiliated with organized religion. So, right.
Well,
So they put it on a survey. They started putting on a survey probably a decade ago or so, starting saying, are you none of the above? Sort of none of the above.
Mhm.
And that's where that kind of came from. So are you Protestant, Catholic, Jew, Muslim, and none of the above? And so this huge growing trend of none of the above.
Sounds
so-
like a hungry group that nature could feed.
I'm pretty close to being one of those. So yeah, I think that's right. I have every affinity with those who say that.
Oh, no, I totally understand why they are there. I totally understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It took me 60 some years I'm not going to say, 65 years to find a church that I'm finally comfortable with. And like Rod said, will that church be there and feed me forever?
Right. It doesn't matter, actually. Right.
And-
Yep, that's right.
As we wrap things up, people are asking for the PowerPoints. I mean, I'm happy to provide the one I just did. I don't really know that anybody would want that because it's not relevant to their church. I would be willing to provide the one that I showed at St. Peter's that preceded all of this. If there's a way to upload that somehow, I don't know. But
It is. I guess the thing to do is to send it to me. And I will figure out a way to get it posted on
It's
to.
gonna be too big to send via email, so we'll have to work out a Dropbox kind of thing.
Yeah, Dropbox kind of thing, or some link to it somewhere.
Yeah,
If you host it,
I think I can do it through a Wheaton account, even though I'm no longer a prof there. I think I still might have their Dropbox thing.
yeah, Dropbox, OneDrive,
Yeah.
Google Drive, those kind of places will do that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
Jerry,
don't do that often, very.
Do you think it would be a good idea maybe to somehow put those links in the letters in a email or something if people would request that, or put it into the Deep Green Faith? Can you put that on the website?
You mean
Here's
the links from that I
Yeah.
dropped in the chat?
Yeah, like links, yeah, or any of the other links in the conversation, so you might think that would be important, relevant.
I don't know, for one.
Well, they can go back and watch, right?
Say what?
They can go back and watch and read the chat, can't they?
All right, in fact, let me drop this